Hi, I am Amanda and I am here to show you how to pick up stitches for the gusset on my Chirality Socks pattern. You can find me on Instagram as Technicolor Mom or on Ravelry as Miss Blaine. You can also check out my website, technicolormom.com, for design blog posts and updates and what am I working on these days, that kind of thing. I don't update it a whole lot, but when I have a new design, I do. So this is my newest design, the Chirality Socks, and I want to show you how to pick up stitches along the edge here. Now this video is going to apply to the even sizes, 48 stitches, 64 stitches, and 80 stitches. The 56 and 72 stitch sizes don't have the same, the heel flap is a little bit different. They have a column of knit stitches here, so then you don't end up needing to pick up, you can pick up any way that you normally do. I'm going to show you how to do it on this one, where you only have one stitch along the edge of the heel flap before a purl stitch. So I will show you how to pick up those and make it look nice and neat along that edge and nice and neat on the inside as well, which of course is completely up to you. How you want to do it. This is what I prefer because it feels satisfying to make it look nice on the inside. So I'm going to walk all the way through the setup round for the gusset, including knitting across these stitches at the bottom of at the end of the heel turn, and then setting up for picking up the stitches along, here we go, along the edge here, knitting across the instep, picking up the stitch in the gap here, and then working around to the picking up these stitches along the side of the sock as well. I'll put timestamps down at the bottom so you can skip ahead to whichever part you need. If you're just here for the picking up stitches and you don't need to see how I pick up the stitch in the gap, then just skip ahead to that and you'll be all set. But in case you want to see everything, I wanted to show you my work because that's how my teacher brain works. I need to show you everything and not skip any steps. So go to wherever you feel most comfortable and where you will feel like you get the information that you need, and I will show you that whole process. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, if you learned something, please let me know in the comments or click that like button down below. Let me know what other kind of tutorials you would like to see, and I'd be happy to make them. So let's get started on picking up our stitches for the gusset on our Chirality socks. So there are several different ways to pick up stitches when you're knitting, and some of them give neater results than others. If you're picking up stitches, you're doing it right. But I just wanted to show you how mine looks. So I'm working on my second sock using this pretty peach colorway from the Lemonade shop. And I am ready to pick up stitches for the gusset. So let me show you how I do that. And I'll show you a couple of tricks that I use as I'm working on this. So this is my last round of my, sorry, this is my first round of my gusset. Get my yarn untangled here. And I need to slip and then knit across these. So I should have 20 stitches, or no, I'm working on an odd number. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 19. I have 19 stitches. And so if you're working the 64 stitch size, you should have 19 stitches at this point. So I'm going to slip, and I always slip with the yarn in the back here to the wrong side of the work when I'm working on a right side row. So slip, and then I'm just going to knit across. Okay, like I said, there are many, many ways to pick up stitches, and as long as you're picking up stitches, it doesn't really matter. But a couple of my friends at Knitting Group asked me how I pick up stitches to get this nice edge, so I just wanted to show you in case you I haven't tried it before. Now, this is the same pickup that I use for all of my socks, but it looks a little bit different on this one because we have, if you look at the edge of this heel flap, I have a knit stitch on the very edge and then a purl stitch right next to it. And so when you have the knit stitch with the purl stitch right next to it, it makes it a little bit, you're looking at it a little bit differently when you're picking up the stitches. So let me show you how I do this. Now, the first thing I do when I'm picking up stitches is I split my sock so that all of the right half of the sock is on one needle and all of the left half of the sock is on another needle. If you're working on small circumference, it won't matter. I'm just going to pick a spot in here. I usually like to pick after a purl stitch but before a knit stitch so that I'm always starting the needle on a knit stitch if I can. I know that some of my patterns have you start on the purl stitch, but what I do is usually just slip that to my other needle and remember that it's there. All right, so I'm going to push this up here, and then I'm going to do the same thing over here, and I believe, I can't remember if, I'll have to double check and I'll put it down here in the bottom, but I either have you do 10 on one side and 9 on the other, or 9 on one side and 10 on the other, but I'm just going to pick, it doesn't really matter. I'll remember, I'll put 10 on the right side. So I'm just going to pinch it and pull that cable up between, and then put these stitches on the needle. There they are, and then can pull this back so that I just have a short piece there in the back between those two. So now my sock is sideways and I'm ready to pick up my stitches. So here's what I am going to do to start with. So when I pick up my stitches, I want to pick up between the knit stitch on the edge and the purl stitch that's right next to it. So in some patterns you'll see, so this is the knit stitch, and sometimes you'll see pickups where you'll put the whole needle through the whole edge stitch and pick up, and you can do that. That's perfectly valid. Some people like to pick up just one loop, and notice if you pick up just the back loop and knit across, you'll end up having the front loop still on the front of the sock. And so I want to hide that. I want that to be behind mine. So I'm going to pick up between. Now I usually will take my left needle and pick up a few stitches and then knit those, and then pick up a few more stitches and then knit those. It's really a personal preference. So I want you to find the edge stitch. So right here, that's my knitted edge stitch. And then if you kind of tug this out a little bit, you can see the stitch in between. And what you want to do is take your needle and find where this V comes out over here between the knit stitch and the purl stitch. So if I'm going to grab a stitch that's over here, and I want to get it that's at the base of that V. And this stitch, or this loop that I've picked up, is actually connected to this V. And I want to do that for all of the V's. So let's see if I can zoom it in a little bit. So I'm picking up that stitch right there. Same thing here. I've got this V and I want to pick up a stitch at the bottom. Now, if you just stick your needle in here, you're going to get a whole lot of things, and that's okay. You only need one strand, and it doesn't matter a huge, it doesn't make a huge difference which one of the strands you pick up. You just need one, but it's kind of in between. So I always like to grab the one that is connected to the V of the stitch right there. All right, and I'm going to grab one last one. Now, I never pick up a stitch right at the end here. You can pick up one there if you want. I don't usually pick that one up. So I'm going to go ahead and knit my 4 that I've picked up and then pick up the next ones. If you don't get exactly the number of stitches picked up, that's okay. You'll just either decrease them out in the next round or skip a stitch in the, skip a decrease in the next round. So this looks like you have these nice edge stitches here. There are no holes or gaps, which is what I really want. And then I have this nice knit column on the inside. So let me show you a few more times. I'm going to start somewhere out here, and I'm just going to find this V, and I'm going to stick my needle kind of under there and grab just that one loop of that V right there. Okay, and then I'm going to get the next one, and the next one, and the next one. All right, so now I've picked up all of the ones that haven't been picked up so far. So you can see this is the last V that I've picked up, and that V up there already has a stitch in it. So let me get these. I have 4 more, and I'm going to knit them just like usual. I'm still putting the needle in the front loop and knitting it. And you can use your preference on this if you want to knit in the back loop. Just kind of experiment with it and see what do you think looks best, because honestly, that's the only thing that matters is, do you like your socks and do you like how they look? And this is how I like mine to look, and it gives this nice, we see these cables right along the edge here, and so I just really like that. All right, so I've picked up 8 stitches so far. I need to get 8 more in the V's. So let me go ahead and start. I'll start all the way down here at this last V, and I know this is the last V because it's the last kind of elongated stitch. So that's the last one that I'm going to pick up right at the base of that V. So we need 1, 2. Now if you come in here and you get 2 stitches, you can just back the needle up a little bit until you just have 1 loop on there. And you can use your other hand to kind of help with it. And this might, sometimes this can take a little while. This is probably one of the slow steps. But I just like to take my time so that I have a nice, pretty edge. All right, so now I've got, I've got 2, 4, 6, 8. So I've got my other 8 stitches. I'm working the 64 stitch size, so I have 16 stitches that I need to pick up along the edge of the heel flap. And then I'm going to pick up 1 stitch in the gap, and I'll show you how I do that one as well. Okay. So now I have all of my 16 stitches picked up, and then I have that nice knitted column on the back side there. And I'm going to pick up 1 stitch in the gap. I usually like to come down in, let's see, which one looks good. Honestly, I pick and choose depending on the sock and how I think it looks good at the time. But picking up a stitch right here in the gap, I'm going to see if I can get this little yellow strand. And sometimes I'll knit it and then see how it looks next to the other ones. And then if I don't like it, I'll undo it and do another one. I like how that looked. I like how that looks. So let me show you which one I picked up there. So right in here, I have a column of knit stitches. That's the last stitch, the first stitch that turned in on my heel flap there, that turned into that column of knit stitches on the edge. And right next to it, I have the column of knit stitches that's still attached to the needle for the instep. And so I'm looking in here, I want to grab the left leg of one of these stitches that go into the V's on the heel flap. So it doesn't really matter which one you pick, as long as, again, like I said, as long as you like how it looks. I'm going to pick up this orange one right here. This is in the same row as the row below the needle here. I can tell because it's the same color, and this has got a bit of tonality to it. So I see this stitch below here is an orange one, and right next to it is this orange stitch. So I'm going to pick up the left leg there and knit that stitch, and then knit the next stitch. And so now I've picked up the stitch in the gap. And I think that looks good, so I'm going to keep going. And I'm just going to work across the instep in pattern, and depending on which size you're working, this row, depending on which size you're working, this row may look slightly different. I am just working straight across here. I'm not doing any increases or decreases or cables. So I'm just going to work all the way across until I get to the other side and I'm ready to pick up the stitches for the other side of the heel flap. Turn this around. Now I like to split my gusset stitches on this way so that I find that if I have significantly more stitches on one needle than on the other needle, sometimes like the loop bends or it just feels a little bit tight for me. So I usually like to divide it up pretty evenly. Again, I'm working with an odd number of stitches on the heel and an odd number of stitches on the instep for this pattern. So it's not going to be identical depending on where you split it, but if you get close, it's fine. We're counting the total number of stitches when we do our decreases for our gusset anyway, and I always will include what number you're getting back to after you finish all of the decreases from your gusset. Let's see, it looks like I've split a stitch there. I'm going to fix that. Just drop that little loop right off. There we go. No, I don't need to split another one. Okay, there we go. I'm going to work all the way back until I'm ready to start the pickups for the other side. Oh, and you know what? I didn't put that marker in, did I? I brought the markers over here, and then I meant to put it in, but I never do. I'm so bad. Okay. All right, so I am going to pick up stitches along this left side of the sock, along the heel flap. Before I get going, I'm going to need one stitch in the gap. And again, it's not going to be, I don't have like a hard and fast, like this is always how I do it. I just do whatever looks best in the moment. And sometimes I undo it. And let's see if I can tell. When I worked this one here, there it is. This is my picked up stitch here. And sometimes, or there it is right there. I did almost like a left lifted increase there in that column below. Because this is the edge stitch for the heel flap. And then this is the last stitch on the instep. Let me see. Can't really see that, can you? Okay, let me show you again. So here I had 2 stitches at the end of the instep, and then the next stitch was on the edge of the heel flap. This one went down to the heel flap, and I've already picked up stitches, so it kind of tucks in behind, but that's the column I'm looking at there. And so I've picked up a stitch below this one here. So let me see if I can show you how I do that. Now these pickups are only going to work for, the even sizes. So I think this will work for the 48, 64, and 80 stitch sizes. For the 56 and 72 stitch sizes, you end up having 2 stitches on the end. And so you're not so worried about hiding that one stitch in the column because it's not, that one stitch that would be along the edge because you're going to have a couple of stitches there anyway. So the method of pickups isn't as important on those sizes. I pick up the same way as I'm doing here. There's just not a purl stitch right next to it on the edge, but I still pick up the little bar right at the bottom of the V. All right, so I did a left lifted increase over here. Let me grab that stitch. So here, for a left lifted increase, I'm gonna go, this is the stitch below on the needle. I'm gonna go one more down below that and grab that stitch, and I'm just gonna knit that. Sometimes I really do kind of like finagle with it to get that one picked up stitch. Sometimes I'll pick up 2 things and then knit them together. It really just depends on you, but I'm here to show you how to pick up along the edge. So I have my V's. Those are my V's, and then if I tug this out a little bit, you can see the purl stitches right in between the V's and that cable. And I want to pick up the stitches at the bottom of the V's. I'm going to start here picking up on with my right needle and show you how that looks. So I'm grabbing that V right at the bottom, or that bar right at the bottom of the V. So I'm kind of going in between these 2 stitches. So if you go right in between there, you see how I've gotten those 2 strands. I just need one of them. I'm going to pick the one that connects to that V there. It doesn't really matter as long as you're getting one bar here. I'm going to get one more there. If you're working with speckled or variegated yarn, sometimes it's a lot easier to tell which strand you've gotten just because the color changes. And so you can tell really easily. Let's see, which one am I getting? I'm getting this back one back here. And again, it doesn't really matter, just as long as you're kind of consistent with it. I'm not picking up the purl stitches. The purl stitches are still there. I'm just picking up the stitches that are connected to these V's. So you can see that if I kind of pull this tight, it pulls those V's up next to it, that edge column of stitches. I'm going to go all the way across. So I just got, this one is connected to here. So I'm going to go up to the next V and grab one. And you just kind of have to go slow with it, or slowly. Don't rush. It's not a race. You can do it. Sometimes it's for, you know what? Sometimes I get all the way across and I'm like, I missed that one and I have to pull it all the way out. It's fine. It's fine. Sometimes you just, you know, take a minute. Get back to it. Okay. And I think this will be the last one. So I'm going to spread these out and count them. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So I have my 16. And so I've picked up that little bar that's connected to the V, but before it goes into the purl stitch. So if you look on the reverse side, the purl columns on the back side look like a knit column. And so you can see this knit column is still intact right there next to it. Those are the purl stitches on the front side. So I haven't disrupted any of those stitches. I haven't picked up any of the actual purl bars. I've picked up the bar between that stitch and the edge stitch, and that's what I want. Okay, so now I'm going to slip all of these stitches back to my left needle because my yarn is way back here, and I need to be able to knit them. So I just go one at a time. I'm not twisting it or rearranging it when I slip it over. And again, you don't have to do it this way. You can pick up directly on the left needle like we did with the other side, or you can pick up with the right needle if you have more kind of fine motor control over that one, and then shift them over to the left needle. That doesn't really matter. Whichever one helps you get into the stitch the easiest. I find that on this side, using my right hand is slightly easier. Okay. So now I'm going to, I picked up a stitch down below, and I'm going to go ahead and knit the next stitch and then decide, is that good for me, or do I need to like adjust that gap picked up stitch? So let's look at it. I'm going to knit the next stitch. And so you can kind of see that I have a little bit of a hole there, and I don't usually like to leave that. So I'm going to take that picked up stitch and drop that off. I don't love it. And let's just try one stitch from over here. If I do a right lifted increase on this side, kind of in the middle, let's see how that looks. And that one is still giving me a pretty big gap here, which is not my favorite. And then I usually will link in, let's see, can I do an extra pick up here? And was that actually an extra? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Okay, so if I pick up an extra one down there and then maybe pick up one on this side. And this is a tutorial that I typically link in my, or similar to the tutorial that I typically link in my patterns for a really good way to pick up a stitch in the gap. And I've just twisted that around to where the right side, right leg is in the front, and I'm going to knit those two together. And so there's not as big of a gap there. Let me knit the next stitch and see if I like it. Okay, so I like that. I'm not getting a huge gap. It does pull on this stitch a little bit. I'm not super worried about that. That's okay for me. And I'm just going to continue knitting across the stitches that I've picked up. Again, the gap is totally user preference, knitter preference, and how you pick that up. But you can try out that video that I linked as well in the pattern that will take you to how to pick up kind of one leg on each side of the gap and then work those together. I use that for a lot of my socks when I'm knitting, especially on this side of the sock. On the other side, it's a little bit easier to do the lifted increase without getting a gap. All right, that's my last one that I picked up, and I'm just going to kind of hold the stitch next to it with my thumb and knit into this. Okay. All right, so I finished picking up the 1 stitch in the gap and the 16 stitches along the edge of the heel flap, and now I need to knit to the middle of the bottom of the foot, and then I'm going to place my beginning of round marker. And for this pattern, I have you, for the 64 stitch size, you'll knit 9 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I've got one more here from the 10 that I had at the bottom of the foot, and I'm just going to pull my needle out so that that sits on the left needle, and I usually just use wherever the gap is in my magic loop as my starting point for the beginning of the round. So that's one of the reasons that I like to move the beginning of the round to the center of the bottom of the foot, because that's how I work my gussets. But everybody's different, and so you just do what works for you. Okay, so let me show you here. I've picked up my stitches along the edge, and my purl stitches are still intact here. You can see them in the column right next to the knit stitch. This is the knit stitch that got pushed to the edge or to the back because I picked up kind of in front of it between that stitch and the purl stitch. And so I've picked up that bar in between, and that looks nice and neat, and it does so on both sides. There we go, and we have those purl stitches there. And so that's how I pick up my stitches for this sock, for all socks really, but specifically for the purl stitch next to the knit stitch. It looks a little bit different when you're picking it up. So that's how I do it. I hope this has helped you. If it has, please let me know in the comments, or drop down or like the video. If you need, if there's something that you're like, oh, how do you do this, Amanda? Feel free to ask, and I'll see if I can get a video up for you. That's how that looks. And again, this is how it looks on the inside of my Chirality sock. And I just think that looks so nice and polished. Again, it's on the inside of the sock, so it really doesn't matter. That's just how I like to do mine. So this is my Chirality sock. You can see it here. This is one of my favorite socks that I've designed so far. I love the detail where the cables go down into the heel flap and then how they go all the way to the end of the toe. I think that's just so fun. It gives it a nice kind of different feel, and then it goes nice all the way up there to the edge of the cuff as well, which I love. So thank you for knitting this pattern, and I hope this has helped you, and I'll see you next time.